Here is the completely localized American English adaptation of the story. I am sitting in this cold courtroom, my hands trembling in my lap, trying to breathe as I listen to my own daughter-in-law ask the judge to take my house away from me. My house, the place where I spent 40 years of my life, where I raised my son, where I buried my dreams right alongside my husband. Jessica is over there, in her perfectly pressed gray power suit, her hair pulled back in an impeccable bun, speaking in that soft, controlled voice she always uses when she wants to play the victim. She says I can no longer take care of myself, that the house is falling apart, that I am a danger to myself and others. I look at my son, Michael, sitting next to her, and search for his eyes, but he stares at the floor as if he cannot bear to look at me. Jessica's lawyer, a woman named Catherine with bright red lipstick and the gaze of a shark, presents paper after paper to Judge Thompson, a silver-haired man who reviews every document with a serious expression. I feel like I am drowning. I feel like everything is lost. And then, right in the middle of this living hell, my grandson Leo stands up from his chair. He is 10 years old, but in this moment, he looks so much older. His voice breaks the heavy silence of the courtroom. "Can I show you something my mom doesn't know about, Your Honor?" Judge Thompson looks at him in surprise, then at Jessica, who is paralyzed in her seat, her eyes wide open. Finally, he nods slowly. Leo pulls a small device out of his backpack and walks toward the bench with steady steps. His hands are not shaking. Mine are. When the images begin to appear on the courtroom screen, I hear Jessica sob. I see Michael turn completely pale. I watch as every person in that room opens their mouth in absolute shock. And that was when everything fell apart. But to understand how I got to this moment, I need to go back to the beginning. I need to tell you about the life I had before Jessica entered it like a silent tornado and destroyed it piece by piece. 3 years ago, I was a different person. I was still mourning my husband, who had died 6 months earlier from a massive heart attack, but I was learning to live alone. The house we lived in, the one we built together with so much sacrifice, was my refuge and my torment at the same time. Every corner held a memory. The kitchen where we made breakfast on Sundays, the living room where we watched old black and white movies, the garden where my husband planted rose bushes that I now tended to with trembling hands and tears that fell without permission. Michael came to visit me every week. He brought food, checked that everything was okay, and sat with me to drink coffee. He asked me how I was sleeping, if I needed anything, if the neighbors were helping me. He was a good son, an attentive son. In the afternoons, I cooked. I made the recipes my husband loved, like his favorite meatloaf. I cleaned the house from top to bottom, even though no one else saw it. I watered the plants. I talked to the photographs on the wall. I went for walks through the neighborhood where everyone had known me forever. Mrs. Higgins, my neighbor of a lifetime, would come over with fresh banana bread. We talked on the porch about our late husbands, about our children, about how the world had changed so much. I felt lonely, yes, but I was not lost. I knew who I was. I knew where I belonged. And then Michael met Jessica. I remember the day he introduced her to me perfectly. It was a Saturday afternoon. The sun was coming through my living room windows, illuminating the dust motes in the air. Michael arrived with her on his arm, smiling in a way I hadn't seen in years. "Mom, this is Jessica. She's very special to me." Jessica extended her hand with a perfect smile. She was wearing a cream-colored dress, high heels, and a perfume so strong it made me cough. Her nails were long and red, like polished claws. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Eleanor. Michael has told me so much about you." Her voice was sweet, like poisoned honey. But I didn't know it yet. I couldn't see what was coming. I only saw a beautiful woman who made my son smile, and I thought that maybe, after all the pain, Michael had finally found something good. We sat down to have iced tea. Jessica praised everything. The house was charming. The furniture was vintage chic. The garden was a dream. I felt flattered. I felt seen. Michael told me they had been dating for 6 months, that they had met at work, that Jessica was incredible, intelligent, ambitious, that he had never been happier. I nodded, smiled, poured more tea. Inside, a small part of me wondered why Michael had never spoken to me about her before. Why did he wait so long to introduce her? But I silenced that voice. I didn't want to be the bitter mother, the jealous mother-in-law, the widow who can't let go of her son. 3 months later, Michael announced he was getting married. It was fast, too fast, but he was radiant, and I didn't want to ruin his happiness with my doubts. The wedding was small, at a fancy country club that Jessica chose. I wore my best dark green dress and tried to smile in all the photographs. During the reception, Jessica hugged me and whispered in my ear with that sugary voice, "We're family now, Eleanor. I'm going to take very good care of Michael. You don't have to worry about a thing." I should have heard it then. I should have paid attention to the way she said, "You don't have to worry," as if I were a burden, as if my concern as a mother was a problem to be solved. But I didn't. I just smiled and thanked her. The first few months were normal. Michael continued to visit me, although now less frequently. Jessica came with him sometimes, always smiling, always perfect. She asked about my health, about my meds, if I was sleeping well. She seemed genuinely interested. And then she got pregnant. Michael was euphoric. I was happy for him, of course. The idea of being a grandmother filled me with an emotion I hadn't felt in a long time. I thought a baby would unite us more as a family. I thought everything would be beautiful. Leo was born on a spring morning. When I held him for the first time in the hospital, that little baby with his eyes closed and his tiny fists clenched, I felt my heart expand in a way I didn't think possible. He was perfect. He was mine. He was the continuation of everything my husband and I had built. "He's going to be a wonderful boy," I told Jessica, who was lying in the hospital bed, pale but smiling. "Yes," she replied. And for a second, I saw something strange in her eyes, something cold. But she blinked, and it disappeared, and I thought she was just tired from the birth. During Leo's first year of life, I went to visit them 3 times a week. I helped with the baby, cooked for Michael and Jessica, cleaned up a little. Jessica seemed grateful. She told me she wouldn't know what to do without me, that I was a wonderful mother-in-law, that Leo adored me. And it was true. Leo adored me. When he cried, I calmed him down. When he was hungry, I prepared his meals. When he needed love, I held him against my chest and sang him the same lullabies I had sung to Michael. Those were good times, the last good times I would have. And it was there, in that false peace, that Jessica began to weave her web. Everything began to change when Leo turned 2. Jessica started canceling my visits. She always had a perfect excuse. Leo was sick. They had family plans. Michael was very busy with work. They needed alone time as a family. At first, I understood. Or at least I tried to understand. Young parents need their space. Maybe I had been too present. Maybe I had overstepped with my help. So I took a step back and waited for them to call me. Weeks turned into months. My visits went from 3 times a week to once every 2 weeks, then to once a month. The phone calls became shorter, colder. When I asked about Leo, Jessica answered with monosyllables. "He's fine. He's busy. He's sleeping." Michael stopped coming to visit me alone. Now he always came with Jessica, and she controlled every conversation. If I tried to talk to my son about something personal, she interrupted with some comment about their plans, her work, her perfect life. My son, the man I had raised, simply nodded and smiled as if he were under a spell. One afternoon, after one of these awkward encounters, I tried to speak to Michael alone when he went to the bathroom. I asked him if everything was okay, if I had done something wrong, if he was happy. He looked at me with tired eyes and said, "Mom, everything is fine. Jessica just wants us to be a more independent family. You understand, right?" I didn't understand, but I said yes because I didn't want to lose him. That was when Jessica started with the comments. Small at first, almost imperceptible. She asked me if I had taken my medicine, if I remembered taking my medicine. She said things like, "Eleanor, you already told me that story last week when I was sure I hadn't." She corrected me in front of Michael when I said something, insisting that I had misunderstood or remembered it wrong. "Your mom is confusing the dates again, honey." "Eleanor, are you sure it was that day? I remember it differently." "Oh, Eleanor, I think your memory is playing tricks on you." Michael began to look at me with concern, as if I were disintegrating in front of his eyes, as if I had suddenly become fragile and confused. And I started to doubt myself. Maybe I was forgetting things. Maybe I was confused. I was 72 years old, after all. Jessica suggested that Michael take me to the doctor for a checkup, just to be safe. Michael agreed immediately, grateful that his wife was so considerate of his mother. I went to the doctor. They ran tests on me, cognitive exams, questions about dates, names, places. I passed all the tests. The doctor said I was perfectly lucid for my age. Some normal forgetfulness. Nothing worrying. I gave the report to Michael with a sense of relief and vindication. But Jessica read the report and frowned. "How strange," she said. "Maybe you should see a specialist, a neurologist, just to be completely sure." There was no specialist. I refused. But the damage was already done. The seed of doubt had been planted in my son's mind. Then Jessica changed tactics. She started talking about my house, about how big it was, about how much work it must be to keep it clean, about how dangerous it was for a woman of my age to live alone in a 2-story house with stairs. "Michael, aren't you worried that your mom might fall, that she might have an emergency, and no one will be there to help her?" Michael began visiting me with critical eyes. He noticed every unwashed dish, every pile of laundry, every stain on the rug, things he wouldn't have seen before. Now they were evidence of my supposed incapacity. "Mom, maybe Jessica is right. This house is too big for you." "It's not too big," I replied. "I've lived here for 40 years. I know every corner. It's my home. But you're alone. If something happens to you, I have neighbors. I have friends. I have my phone. I'm fine, Michael, please." He didn't insist that day, but Jessica did. Again and again, in every visit, in every call, the house was a problem, the house was dangerous, the house was slowly killing me. And then the suggestions about the nursing home started. Jessica brought brochures, "Beautiful places," she said, "with gardens and activities, with people my age, with nurses available 24 hours a day. No worries, no responsibilities, just peace and care. Think about it, Eleanor. You could make new friends, have company all the time, not be so lonely." "I'm not lonely," I repeated, "and I don't want to leave my house." But Jessica was persistent, relentless. Every visit brought new arguments, new reasons why I would be happier somewhere else, safer, better cared for. Michael began to nod more and more with every argument. Leo was 4 years old then. He still remembered me. He still ran to me when I arrived. He hugged my legs and asked me to tell him stories. Jessica would gently pull him away, saying that Grandma was tired, that Grandma needed to rest, that he shouldn't bother Grandma. I wanted to scream at her to stop using my grandson as an excuse, that I was never too tired for Leo. But I didn't. I was afraid that if I protested, if I caused problems, they would forbid me from seeing my grandson completely. One night, Michael came to my house without Jessica. It was late. He looked exhausted. He sat on the living room sofa and stared at the photographs on the wall. The photos of his dad, the photos of him as a child, the photos of our family when we were happy. "Mom," he finally said, "I need us to consider selling the house." My heart stopped. "What?" "The house is worth a lot of money, much more than what Dad paid for it. With that money, you could pay for an excellent place, a place where you're taken care of, and I could use part of the money to secure Leo's future, his education, his college." There it was, the real reason, the money. Jessica wanted my house for the money. "This house is mine, Michael. Your father and I paid for it for 30 years. Every brick has our sweat in it. It's not just a property, it's our life." "I know, Mom, but Dad isn't here anymore, and you're not going to live forever. Wouldn't you prefer to see that money used for something good while you're still here?" I felt betrayed, hurt in a way I hadn't felt even when my husband died, because this wasn't cruel fate. This was my own son, the boy who had grown up within these walls, asking me to abandon them. "I am not going to sell my house," I said with a firm voice. "And I am not going to discuss this anymore." Michael left that night without saying goodbye. Things got worse quickly after that. The visits stopped completely. Michael stopped answering my calls. When he finally answered, he was brief and distant. Jessica was always in the background, whispering things I couldn't hear completely. They stopped bringing Leo to see me. When I asked about him, they told me he was busy, that he had activities, that he was growing up and needed a routine. I cried at night thinking about my grandson, wondering if he still remembered me. 2 months after that conversation with Michael, a man knocked on my door. He was carrying a manila envelope. Inside were legal papers, a petition. Jessica and Michael were filing for conservatorship to force a sale. They argued that I was incapable of taking care of the property, that I was in a state of mental decline, that I was a danger to myself and to the value of the estate. The house, I discovered reading the documents, wasn't just in my name. When my husband died, Michael had been added as a co-owner, something I had signed without thinking, believing it was just to make things easier if something happened to me. Now that legal detail had become a weapon against me. I called Michael crying. I begged him. I asked him how he could do this to me, how he could destroy his own mother for money. His voice on the other end of the line was cold, rehearsed, as if he were reading a script that Jessica had written. Mom, this is for your own good. You can't keep living alone. You're going to end up hurting yourself. We are doing the right thing. The right thing? The right thing is destroying me? Taking away the only thing I have left of your father? We've already made the decision. The papers are filed. I'm sorry, Mom. And he hung up. I sat in my empty living room, holding those papers with trembling hands, wondering how I had reached this point. How the woman who had given her entire life for her son was now being destroyed by him. But I hadn't seen anything yet. I still didn't know how far Jessica was willing to go to get what she wanted. And that was where the true nightmare began. The days after receiving those papers were the darkest of my life. I woke up every morning with a weight on my chest, so heavy I could barely breathe. The house that had been my sanctuary now felt like a prison. Every room reminded me of what I was about to lose. Every photograph on the wall screamed at me that I had failed as a mother. I didn't eat. I barely slept. I sat in the kitchen for hours looking out the window, wondering where I had gone wrong. What had I done to deserve this? Mrs. Higgins came to knock on my door, worried because I wasn't going out to the garden anymore. I lied to her, saying I was fine, just a little tired. I couldn't tell her the truth. I couldn't admit out loud that my own son was destroying me. 1 week after receiving the lawsuit, Jessica appeared at my door. Alone, without Michael, without Leo. She was wearing huge sunglasses, even though the day was cloudy, and that fake smile that was already so familiar to me. Eleanor, we need to talk. I let her in because I still had that stupid hope that maybe she was coming to fix things, that maybe she had reconsidered, that maybe there was some humanity left in her. She sat on my sofa as if it were hers, crossed her legs, took off her glasses. Her eyes were hard as stones. Look, this can be easy or it can be hard. You decide. What are you talking about? About the house? You can sign the papers voluntarily, move to a nice place I already found for you, and we all continue to be a happy family. Or you can fight, spend money on lawyers that you don't have, and in the end, lose anyway. But if you fight, I promise you that you will never see Leo again. Her words hit me like slaps to the face. You can't do that. He's my grandson. He's my son's child. I can do whatever I want. Do you think a judge is going to give visitation rights to an old woman who can't even take care of herself? An old woman whose own family considers her incapable? I'm not incapable. I passed all the medical exams. Ah, yes, those exams. Jessica smiled in a way that froze my blood. You know what's interesting? Doctors are willing to write whatever you want if you pay them enough, and they are also willing to change their evaluations if you present the right evidence. What evidence? There is no evidence because there is nothing wrong with me. Not yet, but there will be. I already took care of that. She got up from the sofa and walked around my living room as if she were appraising a property to buy. She touched my furniture, looked at my photographs, calculated with her eyes how much everything would be worth. This house is worth at least $450,000. Maybe more if we renovate it a bit before selling it. Michael and I already spoke to a real estate agent. There is a lot of demand in this neighborhood. Michael would never do this. Not like this. You manipulated him. Jessica laughed. A genuine laugh. Cruel. Manipulated? Oh, Eleanor. I only opened his eyes to reality. I showed him that he was wasting a fortune keeping you in this huge house, when you could be perfectly fine in a small room with nurses. I made him see that his loyalty to a mother who already lived her life was costing him his son's future. Our son. You are a monster. I am practical. And I am the best thing that ever happened to Michael. Before me, he was a man without ambition, without vision. Now he has goals, plans, a real future, a future built on my destruction. Your destruction. Jessica looked at me with something resembling pity. Eleanor, you are already destroyed. Your husband died. Your son grew up. Your useful life is over. The only thing you are doing is clinging to things that no longer belong to you. I am just accelerating the inevitable. I wanted to scream at her. I wanted to push her out of my house. But I was so tired, so defeated. I could only whisper, "Get out of my house. I'm leaving." But think about what I told you. You have a week to decide. Sign voluntarily or fight and lose Leo forever. It's your choice. She left, leaving a trail of that horrible perfume she always wore. I stayed sitting on the sofa for hours, staring at nothing, feeling my world disintegrate. That night I didn't sleep. The next morning, I looked for a lawyer. I didn't have much money, but I had some savings. An older man named Robert accepted to review my case. He read the papers with a furrowed brow. "Mrs. Eleanor, this is complicated. Your son is a co-owner of the house. Legally, he has the right to request a forced sale or partition if he can prove that you cannot maintain the property effectively or if it's in the interest of the estate. But specifically, they are petitioning for conservatorship claiming incapacity. But I can maintain it. The house is fine. I am fine. We will have to prove that in court. But I need to be honest with you. These cases are difficult and expensive. We are talking about at least $10,000 just to start. I didn't have $10,000. I barely had $3,000 in savings. Robert saw my expression and sighed. I will do what I can with what you have. But I need you to understand that the odds are not in our favor. I signed the papers for him to represent me. I left his office feeling worse than when I had entered. The next 2 months were hell. Jessica and Michael presented evidence of my supposed incapacity. Photographs of my house that had been taken at specific angles to make it look dirty and neglected. Statements from a doctor I had never seen claiming I showed signs of early-onset dementia. Testimonies from neighbors who had supposedly seen me confused and disoriented, something that was completely false. Robert fought as best he could. He presented my real medical exams. He brought Mrs. Higgins as a witness to testify that I was perfectly lucid. He argued that the photographs were manipulated and that the doctor was a paid fraud. But Jessica had something else, something I hadn't seen coming. She hired a psychologist named Dr. Claire, a woman with impressive credentials and a spotless reputation. Dr. Claire testified that she had evaluated my case based on the reports and evidence presented, and that, in her professional opinion, I suffered from significant cognitive decline and represented a danger to myself. "You never evaluated me," I shouted in the middle of the courtroom during one of the preliminary hearings. "You have never seen me in your life." Dr. Claire looked at me with that expression professionals use when they want to seem compassionate but are actually being condescending. "Mrs. Eleanor, I don't need to evaluate you personally when the evidence is so clear. Your emotional reaction right now only confirms my assessment." Judge Thompson asked me to calm down. Robert pleaded with his eyes for me to sit down. I did. But something inside me broke that day. I realized that the truth didn't matter. It didn't matter that I was perfectly fine. Jessica had built a narrative so convincing, had bought so many testimonies, had manipulated so many things, that reality no longer mattered. Michael sat next to Jessica during all the hearings. He never looked me in the eye. He kept his head down, hands clasped, like an ashamed child. But not ashamed enough to stop this. I tried to talk to him once, outside the courtroom. I caught up to him in the parking lot. I grabbed his arm. "Michael, please. I am your mother. How can you do this?" He finally looked at me. His eyes were red, tired, but he didn't back down. "Mom, this is for the best. When it's all over, you'll understand. You're going to be better cared for. You're going to be safe. I don't want to be safe somewhere else. I want to be in my house. I want my family." "You don't have a family anymore." Jessica's voice cut the air like a knife. She appeared behind Michael, grabbed his other arm, and pulled him away from me. "You have nothing anymore, Eleanor. The sooner you accept it, the less painful it will be." I watched them walk away. Michael didn't turn back once. That night, sitting in my empty kitchen, I considered giving up. I considered signing the papers. I considered letting them win. What was the point of fighting? I didn't have money. I didn't have support. My own son had abandoned me. Maybe Jessica was right. Maybe my useful life was over. I took the sleeping pills the doctor had prescribed me months ago. I looked at the bottle. I thought about how easy it would be to take them all. How peaceful it would be to simply not wake up. But then I heard a noise at the door. A soft knock. I opened it and there was Leo. Alone. With his backpack. With tears on his cheeks. "Grandma," he whispered. "I ran away. Mom and Dad are fighting. I needed to see you." I hugged him so hard, I probably hurt him. He smelled of soap and innocence. He was 7 years old now. Bigger. But he was still my baby. "Why don't you come see us anymore?" he asked with that broken voice of a child who doesn't understand why adults are cruel. "Your mom won't let me, my love." "Why?" "Because sometimes adults do bad things. Things that don't make sense." Leo looked at me with those huge eyes full of tears. "Mom says you're going away far. That you're going to live somewhere else. That I won't be able to see you anymore." "I don't know what's going to happen, Leo. But I want you to know something. It doesn't matter where I am. It doesn't matter what happens. I will always love you. Always." "I love you too, Grandma." Michael arrived 20 minutes later, frantic, looking for Leo. He snatched the boy from my arms without a word. Leo was crying. I was crying. Michael simply took him away. And it was there, watching my grandson disappear into the night, that I made my decision. I wasn't going to give up. I wasn't going to let Jessica win. I was going to fight with everything I had until my last breath. Even if it meant losing everything. The date of the final hearing approached like an inevitable storm. Robert did what he could, but every day he gave me worse news. Jessica had obtained more testimonies, more documents, more fabricated evidence that painted a portrait of me as a senile and dangerous old woman. "She has resources that we don't have," Robert told me with evident frustration. "She is paying people, a lot of people, and she is doing it intelligently. Everything looks legitimate on paper, so I'm going to lose." Robert didn't answer immediately. That pause told me everything I needed to know. "I will do my best effort, Mrs. Eleanor. But you need to prepare for the possibility that the judge rules in their favor." I prepared myself. I started packing my things slowly, knowing I would probably have to leave my house. Every object I put in cardboard boxes was like burying a piece of my heart. The photographs of my husband, Michael's old toys, the blankets I had knitted. 40 years of life reduced to cardboard boxes. Mrs. Higgins cried with me while she helped me. "This isn't fair," she repeated over and over. "That woman is the devil." "The devil with a good lawyer," I replied bitterly. 2 weeks before the final hearing, something strange happened. I was at the grocery store buying the little I still bought, when I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Grandma." I turned around, and there was Leo. But he wasn't alone. Jessica was a few yards away, distracted looking at her phone. Leo took advantage of that moment to approach me quickly. "I can't talk much," he whispered urgently. "But I need you to know something. I know what Mom is doing. I've been listening to everything. Leo, you shouldn't. You'll get in trouble. She talks on the phone all the time. With the lawyer Catherine, with Dr. Claire. They say horrible things about you, things that aren't true. Dad tries to defend you sometimes, but Mom always shuts him up." My heart raced. "Leo, my love, this is adult business. I don't want you getting in trouble. I'm already in trouble. I miss my grandma. I miss coming to your house. I miss when you cooked for me and told me stories." His eyes filled with tears. "I don't want you to leave." Jessica looked up from her phone. She saw us. Her expression changed immediately. She walked toward us with quick steps. She grabbed Leo by the arm with force. "What do you think you're doing?" "I was just saying hi to Grandma," Leo said, trying to sound innocent. "I told you not to talk to her. Let's go. Now." She shot me a warning look. "Stay away from my son, Eleanor, or you'll regret it." She took Leo away, almost dragging him. The boy turned to look at me once, and in his eyes, I saw something I hadn't seen before. Not just sadness, determination. That night I couldn't sleep thinking about that encounter. Leo had said he listened to Jessica's conversations, that he knew the truth, but he was just a 7-year-old boy. What could he do against all the power and money Jessica had? The days dragged by. Robert called me with updates that only worsened my anxiety. Jessica had filed more documents. Michael had given a deposition stating he had seen me confused multiple times, that he worried I would hurt myself, that he only wanted the best for me. Your son really believes what he is saying, Robert told me, or he is a very good actor. I can't decide which is worse. Jessica has him under total control. It's like she erased the Michael I knew and replaced him with someone else. I've seen this before. People who manipulate their partners so completely that they can no longer distinguish between what they think and what they've been told to think. 5 days before the hearing, Dr. Claire, the psychologist working with Jessica, filed a new report. It said she had conducted discreet surveillance of my activities and observed erratic behavior, that she had seen me talking to myself, that she had noticed I left lights on and doors open, that I clearly represented a danger to myself. It was all a lie. But it was written on official paper, with the seal of a licensed professional. How could I fight against that? Robert tried to discredit the report, arguing that the surveillance, without my knowledge, was unethical and possibly illegal. But the judge had accepted the document as evidence. It would be in the file during the final hearing. We are losing, I told Robert. It wasn't a question. We are in a very difficult position, he admitted. But we haven't lost yet. I still have some arguments. You can still testify. The judge will be able to see you, talk to you, realize that you are completely lucid. And if it's not enough, then we will look for other options, appeals, other legal routes. But we both knew there was no money for appeals. This was my only chance. The night before the hearing, I sat in my living room, surrounded by boxes. The house felt empty, even though it was still full of furniture. It was as if it had already lost its soul, as if it knew that soon it would have new owners who wouldn't love its walls as I had loved them. I thought about my husband, about how we had painted these walls together, about how we had chosen every piece of furniture with such care because we didn't have money to waste, about how we had raised Michael here, full of hope and dreams about who he would become. We never imagined this. We never imagined our son would betray us like this. Someone knocked on the door. It was almost 11 at night. I opened it carefully and froze. It was Leo, alone, in pajamas, barefoot. Leo, my God, what are you doing here? How did you get here? I walked. It's not that far. Mom and Dad are asleep. You have to go back. If they wake up and don't find you, Grandma, I need to tell you something important. He entered the house and closed the door behind him. He took something out of his pocket, a small device, a digital recorder. I've been recording Mom for months. Every time she talks to the lawyer, Catherine, every time she plans something bad against you, every time she lies to Dad. I gasped. Leo, no. I know spying is wrong, but what she is doing is worse, much worse. His eyes shone with an intensity that shouldn't be in a 7-year-old boy. Tomorrow is the hearing. I'm going to go. Mom said I have to go to show that I am a happy boy in our family. But I'm going to bring this, and I'm going to show it to the judge. Leo, you can't. Your mom, I don't know what she would do to you if she discovers you've been recording her. I don't care. I'm not going to let them take your house. I'm not going to let them hurt you anymore. Tears ran down his cheeks. You always took care of me, Grandma, when I was a baby. When Mom was too busy or too tired, you were always there. Now it's my turn to take care of you. I hugged him, crying. This brave little boy was willing to face his own mother for me. He was willing to reveal secrets that could destroy his family, all to save me. What is on the recordings? I asked with a trembling voice. Everything. Mom telling Dr. Claire to make things up about you. Dr. Claire saying she can fake medical reports. Mom talking about how much money they're going to get when they sell the house. She laughing at you. Telling Catherine that it doesn't matter if it's true or not, that only winning matters. Leo squeezed the device in his hand. I also recorded her when she yelled at Dad for doubting, when she called him weak for feeling bad about what they are doing to you. Leo, this could change everything. I know. That's why I did it. He looked at me with those wise eyes that no child should have. Can I stay here tonight? I don't want to go back there. Your mom is going to come looking for you. Let her come. I'm not afraid of her anymore. I let him stay. I gave him my bed, and I slept on the sofa. I didn't really sleep. I stayed awake all night thinking about what Leo had done, about the risk he was taking, about how a 7-year-old boy had shown more courage and loyalty than my own adult son. At 6 in the morning, as expected, Michael arrived, banging on the door frantically. Jessica was in the car, her face red with fury. Leo walked out calmly, hugged me, and told his parents, "I'm fine. I just wanted to see Grandma one last time before the hearing." Jessica said nothing, but the way she looked at Leo and then at me told me she knew something had changed, that she had lost the absolute control she had over her son, and that terrified her. The morning of the hearing dawned gray and cold. I dressed in my best clothes, a dark green ensemble I had worn to Michael's wedding. I wanted to look dignified. I wanted the judge to see a capable woman, not the senile old lady Jessica had painted in her documents. Robert picked me up at 8. In the car, we reviewed my testimony one more time. What to say, what not to say. How to keep calm when Jessica or her lawyer attacked me. "And if Leo does what he said he would do?" I asked him in a low voice. "What happens?" I told him about the recorder, about the months of evidence my grandson had secretly collected. Robert stayed silent for a long moment. "That could change everything," he said finally. "But it's also risky. Jessica could argue that the recordings were obtained illegally, that a child was manipulated into spying. It could turn against us. Leo wasn't manipulated. He decided to do it alone." "I know, but that's not how Jessica will present it." Robert sighed. "Anyway, if the boy manages to present that evidence, we have to be prepared to use it. We have to make it count." We arrived at the courthouse at 9. Jessica and Michael were already there, sitting on a bench in the hallway. Dr. Claire, the psychologist, was with them, reviewing papers. Everyone was wearing expensive, professional clothes. They looked successful, trustworthy, respectable. I looked exactly like what I was, a tired old woman fighting for her life. Leo was sitting a little apart from his parents, with a backpack on his lap. He saw me and smiled slightly. Jessica noticed and whispered something in his ear. Leo looked down but didn't let go of the backpack. At 9:30, they called us in. The courtroom was smaller than I had imagined. Cold, impersonal. Judge Thompson was already seated, a man in his 60s, with gray hair and a serious expression. He indicated for us to take our seats. Jessica and Michael sat on the left side with their lawyer, the elegant woman named Catherine, who had been hired to represent them. Robert and I sat on the right side. Leo stayed back, in the benches for the public. Judge Thompson reviewed the documents in front of him. The silence was so dense, I could hear my own heart beating. "This is a painful case," the judge began. "A family divided by property. A son seeking what he believes is best for his mother. A mother resisting what she perceives as an attempt to control her." He looked at all of us. "My job today is to determine what is best for Mrs. Eleanor, based on the evidence presented." Catherine, Jessica's lawyer, spoke first. She presented her case flawlessly. She showed the photographs of my house that supposedly proved I couldn't maintain it. She read Dr. Claire's report on my mental decline. She cited neighbors' testimonies who had supposedly seen me confused. "Mrs. Eleanor is a woman who lived a full and beautiful life," Catherine said with a soft, compassionate voice. "But the reality is that she can no longer take care of herself safely. Her son Michael and her daughter-in-law Jessica are not doing this out of malice. They are doing it out of love, out of genuine concern." Michael testified next. He spoke about how he had seen me forget things, how the house had deteriorated, how he worried I would fall or have an emergency with no one there to help. "I love my mother," he said with a cracking voice. "All I want is for her to be safe, to be well taken care of." I almost believed him. For a moment, watching him there with tears in his eyes, I almost believed that he really thought he was doing the right thing. But then I looked at Jessica sitting behind him, with that satisfied expression on her face, and I remembered the truth. Dr. Claire testified after. She spoke in medical and psychological terms that sounded impressive. Cognitive decline, risk of falls, inability to make informed decisions. She painted a picture of me as someone on the verge of total incompetence. In my professional opinion, she concluded, Mrs. Eleanor needs constant care that she cannot receive living alone in such a large house. Robert did his best to counterattack. He presented my real medical exams, which showed I was completely lucid. He called Mrs. Higgins to testify that I was a normal, capable neighbor. He argued that the photographs were manipulated and that Dr. Claire's testimony was based on questionable observations. Mrs. Eleanor is not a senile woman, Robert said with passion. She is a 72-year-old woman being stripped of her home by a greedy daughter-in-law and a manipulated son. Catherine objected. The judge sustained it. Robert had to rephrase. Finally, it was my turn to testify. I walked to the stand with trembling legs. I swore to tell the truth. I sat facing Judge Thompson, who looked at me with eyes that revealed nothing. Robert asked me basic questions. My name, my age, how long I had lived in the house, what my daily routine was like. I answered every question clearly, trying to demonstrate that my mind was perfectly fine. Then it was Catherine's turn to cross-examine me, and that was when it turned brutal. Mrs. Eleanor, can you tell us what date it is today? Tuesday, October 23rd. And what did you have for breakfast this morning? I didn't eat breakfast. I was too nervous. I see. And what did you have for dinner last night? Soup, vegetable soup. Are you sure? Because I have a statement here from your neighbor, Mrs. Higgins, stating she saw you confused last night, asking if you had eaten dinner when you clearly just had. That is a lie. Antonia Mrs. Higgins would never say that. But it is in her statement. Catherine showed me a paper. Indeed, there it was. A testimony supposedly given by Mrs. Higgins, saying things I knew were false. That is forged, I said, feeling panic rise in my throat. Forged? You are accusing my client of forging legal documents? I am saying Mrs. Higgins never said those things. Mrs. Eleanor, isn't it true that sometimes you confuse dates and events? That you sometimes forget conversations you had? No more than anyone my age. But you do forget things. Small things. We all forget small things. Like forgetting if you ate dinner or not. I didn't forget. Like forgetting that your son visited you last week, when you insist he hasn't visited in months? He hasn't visited me in months. I have dated photographs here showing Michael at your house last week. She showed me the photos. Michael at my door. Michael in my living room. The photos were real, but I didn't remember that visit because it had never happened. The dates were altered. They had to be. Those dates are fake, I said, my voice sounding desperate even to myself. Or is it your memory that is fake, Mrs. Eleanor? Catherine continued attacking. Every question designed to make me look confused. Every answer I gave twisted to look like evidence of my supposed mental decline. I felt like a cornered animal. When she finally let me go, I was shaking, sweating. I felt I had failed, that I had confirmed every lie they had told about me. Judge Thompson looked at his watch. We are going to take a 30-minute recess before closing arguments. I stood up from the stand with weak legs. Robert helped me back to our seat. You did well, he whispered, but we both knew it was a lie. I looked toward where Leo was. He was still there, with his backpack on his lap, looking at me with eyes full of tears. Jessica was next to him now, whispering something in his ear. I saw Leo shake his head. I saw Jessica squeeze his arm hard. And then, when the judge stood up to leave, Leo stood up too. His voice, small but clear, cut through the murmur of the room. Your Honor. Judge Thompson stopped at the door to his chambers and turned around. The whole room went silent. Jessica went pale. Michael half rose from his seat. Leo remained standing, his backpack clutched against his chest. Yes, young man? The judge asked, with a kind but curious voice. I need to speak with you, please. It's about my grandma. Leo's voice didn't shake. It sounded clear and determined. Jessica stood up abruptly. Leo, sit down, right now. No, Mom. Leo, I said no. Leo looked directly at the judge. I have something important to show you. Something my mom doesn't know I have. Judge Thompson exchanged glances with the court clerk. Then he looked at Jessica, at Michael, at me, and finally back at Leo. There was something in the boy's expression, a seriousness that didn't match his age, that seemed to capture his attention. Come forward, son, said the judge, returning to his seat. Jessica tried to stop Leo by grabbing his arm, but he pulled away with a quick movement and walked to the front. Every step of his echoed in the absolute silence of the room. My heart was beating so hard I thought everyone could hear it. Leo stood in front of the bench. He looked so small there, a 7-year-old boy facing an adult system. But there was something in his posture, in the way he held his backpack, that made him seem bigger. "What is your name?" asked the judge. "Leo. I am Mrs. Eleanor's grandson." "I see. And what is so important that you need to show me, Leo?" Leo opened his backpack and took out the small device. A digital recorder. He held it up so everyone could see it. "For the last 6 months, I have been recording my mom. I know it's wrong to spy, and I'm sorry I did it. But she has been saying horrible things about my grandma, lying about her. And I have proof." "That is ridiculous," screamed Jessica, standing up. "He is a child. He doesn't know what he's saying." Judge Thompson raised his hand, asking for silence. "Ma'am, sit down, please." His tone admitted no argument. Jessica sat down slowly, her face red with fury and panic. "Leo," continued the judge, "do you understand how serious this is? Do you understand that recording someone without their knowledge can be problematic?" "Yes, sir. But my grandma is more important. She never lied to me. She was never mean to me. And my mom is hurting her." Leo's eyes filled with tears, but he didn't let them fall. "Please, just listen to what I recorded. Please." The judge looked at Robert. "Any objections, counsel?" Robert stood up. "None, Your Honor. If the child has evidence relevant to the case, it should be heard." Catherine, Jessica's lawyer, stood up quickly. "Your Honor, this is completely irregular. The child is a minor. He was clearly influenced by his grandmother to do this. The recordings, if they exist, were obtained illegally and should not be admitted." "Nobody influenced me," interrupted Leo with a strong voice. "My grandma didn't even know I was recording until last night. I did it by myself because I knew what Mom was doing was wrong." The judge leaned back in his chair, thoughtful. I could see the conflict in his expression. This was irregular, problematic, but it was also a child pleading to be heard. "I am going to allow you to present your evidence," he said finally. "But I want you to understand, Leo, that this will have consequences. For you, for your family. Are you sure you want to do this?" Leo looked back, toward where I was sitting. Our eyes met. I saw in him all the love that had existed between us since he was a baby. I saw his determination to protect me as I had protected him. He nodded to himself and turned back to the judge. "I'm sure. Very well. The clerk will connect the device to the audio system so we can all hear." The next few minutes were chaotic. Jessica shouted objections. Catherine threatened to appeal. Michael was paralyzed in his seat, completely pale, looking at his son as if he didn't recognize him. But Judge Thompson maintained his decision. The clerk connected the recorder to the courtroom speakers. Leo indicated which files to play. There were dozens, months of conversations. He had organized everything carefully, choosing the most incriminating recordings. The first voice that filled the room was Jessica's. Clear, cold, completely different from the soft, sweet voice she used in public. "I don't care what you have to make up, Claire. I need that psychological evaluation to say she's losing it, that she is a danger to herself." Dr. Claire's voice responded, "I already have it covered. The report is going to be devastating. No one is going to question my credentials." "And the neighbors? You already got the testimonies. 2 already signed. I paid them $1,500 each. They are going to say exactly what we need." Jessica laughed. "Perfect. That old woman doesn't know who she messed with." The silence in the room was absolute. Everyone looked at Jessica, who had gone completely white. Dr. Claire, sitting a few rows back, tried to leave discreetly, but a court officer blocked her path on the judge's order. "There's more," said Leo with a trembling but firm voice. The next recording was a conversation between Jessica and Michael. My son's voice sounded doubtful, conflicted. "I don't know, Jessica. It feels wrong. It's my mom. Your mom who has manipulated you your whole life? Your mom who wants to keep you tied to her forever?" Jessica's voice was venomous. "That house is worth almost $500,000, Michael. $500,000 that we could use to give Leo a good life, to buy ourselves a better house, to live well. But kicking her out of her house, we are not kicking her out. We are putting her in a place where she will be taken care of. And if it turns out that place is cheaper than she thinks, well, that's just being smart with money." "Cheaper? What are you talking about?" I found a facility that costs $800 a month. We'll tell her it costs $3,000. We keep the difference. She will never know. I heard Michael sigh on the recording. I don't know. Are you a man or not? God, sometimes I think your mother castrated you. You have to decide what is more important, your mom or your real family, me or her. There was a long silence. Then Michael's voice, defeated. You are more important. Good. Then do what I tell you, and stop complaining. I looked at Michael. He had his head in his hands, his shoulders were shaking, he was crying, but it was too late for tears. Leo continued playing files. There were conversations where Jessica instructed Dr. Claire exactly what to write in her false reports. There were calls where they discussed how to manipulate the photographs of my house to make it look worse than it was. There was a particularly gruesome conversation where Jessica laughed at me, imitating my voice, mocking how I had begged Michael not to do this. Please, Michael. I am your mother, imitated Jessica, with a tearful, exaggerated voice. Then she laughed. God, she is so pathetic. I can't wait for this to end so we can sell that horrible house. Every recording was like a nail in Jessica's coffin. Every word that came out of the speakers destroyed the perfect image she had built. The mask had fallen completely. Judge Thompson listened with an increasingly serious expression. Dr. Claire tried to stand up several times, but the officer kept her seated. Catherine, the lawyer, had stopped objecting. There was nothing she could do against this avalanche of evidence. After almost 40 minutes of recordings, Leo stopped the playback. He turned to the judge with tears running down his cheeks. My mom is not a good person, he said with a broken voice. And I don't want my grandma to lose her house because of Mom's lies. My grandma is the kindest person I know. She took care of me when I was a baby. She taught me to read. She makes me feel loved. And I am not going to let them hurt her. Judge Thompson took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. When he spoke, his voice trembled with contained emotion. Son, what you did today required extraordinary courage. I know it was hard. I know you are probably scared. But I want you to know that you did the right thing. Then he looked at Jessica with an expression that froze the blood. Ma'am, I have presided over many cases in my 20 years as a judge. I have seen greed. I have seen manipulation. I have seen families destroy themselves for money. But rarely have I seen something so calculated, so cruel, so completely devoid of humanity as what I just heard. Jessica tried to speak, but the judge raised his hand. No. I have heard enough of your voice, more than enough. He turned to Dr. Claire. Doctor, or whatever you are, I will be forwarding these recordings to the state licensing board. Falsifying psychological evaluations is not just unethical, it is criminal. I hope you enjoy your last days with a license. Doctor, Claire stood up trembling. Your Honor, I can explain. Officer, escort this woman out of my courtroom. Now. Dr. Claire was escorted out of the room, screaming that it was all a misunderstanding, that she had been tricked too. No one believed her. Her screams faded down the hallway as the doors closed behind her. Judge Thompson turned to Jessica, who was now visibly trembling in her seat. Catherine, her lawyer, had begun packing her papers. She knew the case was lost. She knew it was best to distance herself from this disaster before her own reputation was tarnished. Mrs. Jessica, said the judge with a voice that cut like ice, in all my years on this bench, I have rarely seen such an elaborate conspiracy to defraud a family member. What you did was not just manipulation. It was elder abuse. It was fraud. It was emotional extortion. Jessica tried to speak with that sweet voice she always used. Your Honor, if you allow me to explain. There is nothing to explain. Your own words condemn you. The recordings are clear. You conspired to fabricate medical evidence. You paid for false testimonies. You manipulated your husband, and you did it all for pure greed. The judge slammed his fist on his desk. Do you have any idea of the damage you caused? Of the trauma you inflicted on a 72-year-old woman who just wanted to live in peace in her own home? I just wanted the best for the family. Lie. The judge's voice resonated in the whole room. You wanted money. $500,000 that didn't belong to you, and you were willing to destroy an old woman to get it. Jessica started to cry, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of someone who had been caught, tears of frustration because her perfect plan had fallen apart. Michael was paralyzed in his seat. He looked alternately at his wife, his son, and me. In his eyes, I saw something I hadn't seen in years. Clarity, as if finally, after so much time under Jessica's control, he could see the truth. "Michael," said the judge, his voice now softer but no less serious. "You also bear responsibility in this. I heard your voice on those recordings. I saw how you allowed your wife to manipulate you into betraying your own mother." Michael stood up shakily. "Your Honor, I didn't know everything Jessica was doing. The false testimonies, the bribes, I didn't know. But I knew your mother didn't want to leave her house. I knew she was perfectly capable. And I chose to believe your wife's lies because it was more convenient." The judge looked at him with disappointment. A son who betrays his mother for money, who allows the woman who gave him life to be humiliated and destroyed. "How do you live with yourself?" Michael didn't answer. He just wept, tears that came too late. The judge turned to me. His expression softened completely. "Missus, Eleanor, I owe you an apology. This court almost committed a terrible injustice against you. We almost took away your home based on lies and fabrications. I am deeply sorry." I couldn't speak. Tears ran down my face uncontrollably. Robert squeezed my hand. "The petition for conservatorship and sale is denied completely. Your house is yours and will continue to be yours for as long as you wish to live in it." The judge reviewed some papers. "Furthermore, I am ordering that Michael be removed as co-owner of the property immediately. That designation was clearly obtained under false pretenses and has been abused." "Thank you," I managed to whisper. "Thank you. Don't thank me yet, because I haven't finished." The judge turned again to Jessica. "Ma'am, I am referring this case to the district attorney so that criminal charges can be filed against you. Fraud, conspiracy, elder abuse, bribery. Each of these is a felony." Jessica stood up abruptly. "You can't do that. I have a son. I have a family. You should have thought about your son before doing what you did. You should have thought about how your actions would affect him." The judge looked at Leo, who remained standing at the front, exhausted but firm. "That boy showed more integrity and courage in 1 hour than you have shown in your entire life." Jessica tried to approach Leo, but the officer stopped her. "Leo, honey, Mommy is sorry. Everything is going to be fine. Let's go home and—" "I don't want to go home with you," said Leo with a clear voice. "I want to stay with Grandma. You are my son. You can't decide that." The judge intervened. "Given the circumstances and considering the evidence of manipulation and abusive behavior, I am ordering an emergency custody evaluation. In the meantime, Leo will remain under the temporary care of his grandmother, Mrs. Eleanor." "No!" screamed Jessica. "You can't take my son away. You took him away yourself with your actions. Officer, if the lady continues to disturb the order of the court, remove her." Jessica finally fell silent, but her eyes threw daggers at me, at Leo, at everyone. There was no regret in them, only pure hatred because she had lost. Michael approached me slowly. He knelt in front of my chair. His face was swollen from crying. "Mom, I don't know what to say. I don't know how to ask for your forgiveness for what I did." I looked at him. I saw the boy I had raised, the man who had lost his way, the son who had betrayed me in the deepest way possible. "I don't know if I can forgive you, Michael," I said with a trembling voice. "Not now. Maybe never. What you did to me, what you allowed her to do to me, almost destroyed me. I know, and I am so sorry." He took my hand. "I was a coward, a fool. I let Jessica control me because it was easier than facing her, because I wanted to believe we were doing the right thing. You knew it wasn't right. Somewhere inside you, you knew you were hurting me." "Yes, I knew." He lowered his head. "I have no excuses. I can only tell you that I am going to spend the rest of my life trying to make it up to you. I am going to divorce Jessica. I am going to do everything I can to regain even a piece of your trust." I didn't answer. I couldn't. The pain was too fresh, too deep. Leo came over and hugged me. I buried my face in his hair and cried. This little boy had saved my life. He had risked everything for me. He had shown more love and loyalty than my own adult son. "I love you, Grandma," he whispered, "and I'm never going to let anyone hurt you again." I love you too, my brave boy, my hero. Judge Thompson stood up. This hearing is adjourned. Mrs. Eleanor, you may go home. You're home. Leo will go with you. The temporary custody papers will be prepared today. He turned to Jessica one last time. Ma'am, I suggest you get a good criminal lawyer. You're going to need one. And I warn you not to try to contact your son or Mrs. Eleanor in any way. If you do, you will be arrested immediately. Jessica said nothing. She only looked at me with that burning hatred in her eyes. But she didn't scare me anymore. She no longer had power over me. We left the courtroom in a strange procession. Robert carried his papers with a smile he couldn't hide. Leo walked by my side, holding my hand. Michael followed us at a distance, like a ghost of what our family had been. Outside, the sun had come out. The gray day had given way to a bright, clear sky. It was as if the universe itself was celebrating. Mrs. Higgins was waiting outside. She had come to support me, even though they hadn't called her to testify. When I told her what had happened, she cried and hugged Leo as if he were her own grandson. You are an extraordinary boy, she told him. What you did today is going to change lives, not just your grandma's. You are going to inspire others to be brave. Leo just nodded, exhausted by everything he had lived through. Michael approached one more time before we left. Mom, can I visit you? Eventually, when you're ready. I looked at him for a long moment. I saw his regret. I saw his pain. But I also remembered every humiliation, every betrayal, every night I spent crying because my own son had abandoned me. I don't know, Michael. Maybe someday. But not today. And not soon. He nodded, accepting the punishment he deserved. I understand. Just take good care of Leo. And if you need anything at all, please tell me. I have to start making up for the damage I did somehow. The only thing we need is peace, I replied. Something we didn't have while you were with her. Michael walked away with slumped shoulders. I watched him get into his car alone. Jessica had already left in another vehicle, probably to find the criminal lawyer she would desperately need. Robert took me home, along with Leo. During the ride, the boy fell asleep with his head on my shoulder, exhausted by the weight of what he had done. I watched him sleep and felt a mixture of love, gratitude, and sadness. No child should have to be so brave. No child should have to save an adult like this. But he had done it. And thanks to him, I still had my house. I still had my dignity. I still had a reason to keep going. When we arrived at my house, that house I had fought for so hard, I sat in the car for a moment looking at it. The walls my husband and I painted. The garden we tended. The memories of 40 years contained within. It was mine. It was still mine. We entered the house and it felt different. The air was lighter. The walls seemed to glow with a warmth I hadn't felt in months. It was as if the house itself knew it had been saved, that it was no longer under threat. Leo woke up when we crossed the threshold. He looked around with sleepy eyes and then looked at me. Can I really stay here, Grandma? Yes, my love. For as long as you need. I prepared the guest room for him. It was the same room where Michael had slept when he was a boy. I put on clean sheets, took out soft blankets, placed his favorite toys that I still kept from when he was smaller. Leo helped me, and while we worked together, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. That night we cooked together. I made the chicken and potato recipe he had always loved when he was a baby. Leo set the table, something Jessica never allowed him to do at home, because she said he would do it wrong. We ate in the kitchen, talking about simple things. School, his friends, his favorite cartoons. We avoided talking about the court, about Jessica, about all the pain. For one night, we just wanted to be grandma and grandson again. After dinner, we sat on the living room sofa. Leo curled up against me like he did when he was little. I put my arm around him and felt his small, warm body against mine. Grandma, he said after a long silence, do you think Mom hates me now? The question broke my heart. No, my love. Your mom doesn't hate you. She is angry and hurt, but that isn't hate. But I told on her. I ruined her plans. You did the right thing. That is very different. I squeezed him tighter. Sometimes doing the right thing hurts. Sometimes it means the people we love get mad at us. But that doesn't mean it was wrong. I was scared, he admitted with a small voice. When I stood up in court, I was so scared. But then I looked at you and remembered all the times you protected me, all the times you took care of me when Mom didn't want to. And I knew I had to be brave for you. Tears ran down my cheeks. You are the bravest boy I know, Leo. Braver than any adult in that room. Will I have to go back to Mom? I don't know, my love. The judge is going to decide what is best for you. But whatever happens, I will always be here. You will always have a home with me. We stayed like that until he fell asleep. I carried him to his bed, something difficult because he was already big, but I managed to do it. I tucked him in, kissed his forehead, and watched him sleep for a long time. This child had sacrificed his relationship with his mother to save me. He had carried a weight no child should carry. The following days were strange. Adjusting to living together, establishing routines. Leo had to go to school, so I enrolled him in the school near my house. Every morning I woke him up, made him breakfast, helped him get dressed. Every afternoon I picked him up, we checked his homework, we played in the garden. It was exhausting for a 72-year-old woman, but it was also beautiful. It made me feel useful again. It made me feel alive. Michael called every day. At first, I didn't answer. But after a week, Leo asked me to let him talk to his dad. I couldn't deny him that. The conversations between Michael and Leo were brief and painful. Leo told him about school, about what we had cooked, about the games we played. Michael listened and asked questions, but there was a distance between them now, a crack that might never heal completely. Michael also wanted to talk to me. I handed the phone to Leo and left the room, unable to face my son yet. The pain was too fresh. 2 weeks after the trial, Robert called me with news. The district attorney had filed formal charges against Jessica: first-degree fraud, conspiracy, elder abuse. If found guilty of all charges, she could face up to 15 years in prison. Dr. Claire had also been charged. Her medical license had been suspended immediately while they investigated how many other cases she had falsified. It turned out I wasn't her first victim. There were other seniors, other families she had helped destroy for money. Both are going to pay for what they did, Robert assured me. Justice is finally being served, but justice didn't eliminate the pain. It didn't erase the months of emotional torture. It didn't repair the broken relationship with my son. 1 month after the trial, Michael appeared at my door. He hadn't called beforehand. He simply arrived on a Saturday afternoon with a box in his hands. "Mom," he said when I opened the door. He looked terrible. He had lost weight. He had deep circles under his eyes. "Please, can I come in? Just 5 minutes." I hesitated, but Leo was playing in his room, and I didn't want to cause a scene. I let him in. We sat in the living room in an uncomfortable silence. Michael looked around the house as if he were seeing it for the first time, or maybe remembering how he had tried to take it from me. "I filed the divorce papers," he said finally. "Jessica already received them. I'm not going to fight for anything. Let her keep whatever she wants. I just want to be free of her." "Good. And I want you to know that I am going to testify against her at the trial. I am going to tell them everything I know, everything she made me do. I am not going to protect her. I should have stopped her from the beginning, Michael. You should have been my son instead of her puppet. I know. God. Mom. I know." He covered his face with his hands. "I've been going to therapy, trying to understand how I let this happen, how I allowed myself to become someone who betrays his own mother. And what does your therapist say? That I was in an abusive relationship. That Jessica manipulated me just like she manipulated everyone. That she slowly isolated me, controlled me, until I couldn't think for myself." He looked up at me. "But that is no excuse, because in the end, I made the decision. I signed those papers. I abandoned you when you needed me most. Yes, you did. Will you ever be able to forgive me?" The question hung in the air between us. I looked at him. My son. The boy I had raised with so much love. The man who had shattered my heart. "I don't know, Michael. Honestly, I don't know. Part of me wants to forgive you. Part of me still loves you as my son. But another part will never forget how I felt when I read those eviction papers. When I knew my own son wanted to kick me out of my house. I understand." Michael took an envelope out of his pocket. "This is for you. They are documents renouncing any right to this house. Legally, completely. It is yours alone, as it always should have been." I took the envelope with trembling hands. Why now? Because I need to start repairing what I broke, and this is the least I can do. He stood up. I won't bother you anymore, but I want you to know that I am going to be here for Leo. I am going to go through whatever evaluation the court requires. I am going to prove that I can be the father he needs. And if one day, maybe in years, you are ready to talk to me again, I will be waiting. I walked him to the door. Before leaving, he turned one last time. I love you, Mom. I have always loved you, and I am going to spend the rest of my life regretting not showing you that love when it mattered most. He left. I watched him walk to his car, get in, and drive away. I didn't know if I could ever forgive him completely, but at least he had taken the first step. He had admitted his guilt. He had begun to take responsibility. That night, after putting Leo to bed, I sat on my porch looking at the stars. Mrs. Higgins came out of her house and sat with me. We didn't talk much. Just sat there. Two old women who had survived storms. How do you feel? She asked finally. Tired, hurt, but alive. I looked at her. I still have my house, Martha. I still have Leo. I lost my son, at least for now, but I gained something more important. I gained my dignity back. You are stronger than you think, Eleanor. You always have been. I didn't feel strong. For months I felt destroyed, but you didn't break. You fought, and you won. That is what matters. She was right. I had won. Not in the way I expected, not without scars, but I had survived. My house was still mine, my grandson was safe, and the woman who had tried to destroy me would face the consequences of her actions. Justice wasn't perfect. It didn't erase the pain. But it was something. And for now, it was enough. 6 months passed like a sigh. 6 months of healing, of rebuilding, of learning to live again. Jessica's trial was fast and devastating. With Leo's recordings, the testimonies of the neighbors who confessed to having been bribed, and the evidence of the forged documents, the jury didn't take even 3 hours to declare her guilty of all charges. They sentenced her to 12 years in prison. Dr. Claire received 8 years and lost her medical license forever. Michael was present every day of the trial. He testified against Jessica, recounting every lie, every manipulation, every moment she convinced him to betray his own mother. I saw how he cried on the stand. I saw how he finally freed himself from her control. When they announced the verdict, Jessica looked at me from her seat. There was no longer hatred in her eyes, only emptiness. She had lost everything: her freedom, her son, her future, and all for greed. Leo's custody was decided a month after the trial. Judge Thompson determined that it was best for the boy to stay with me permanently, with supervised visits with Michael on weekends. Michael accepted the decision without fighting. He knew he had lost the right to demand more. Leo had adapted wonderfully to living with me. He had made new friends at school. His grades were excellent. In the afternoons, we did homework together at the kitchen table. On weekends, we worked in the garden, planting new flowers where before there were only weeds. The house had come back to life. There was laughter in the hallways, smells of homemade food in the kitchen, music playing in the living room. Everything I had lost during those dark months had returned, multiplied by Leo's presence. Michael visited religiously every Saturday. At first, our interactions were tense and formal. He picked Leo up at the door and brought him back hours later. We didn't speak more than necessary, but slowly, very slowly, something began to change. One day, Michael arrived early and found me struggling with a leak in the kitchen. Without saying a word, he came in, took the tools, and fixed it. We worked in silence, but it was a different silence, less painful. Another time, he brought flowers for the garden. Mom used to say these were her favorites, he told Leo while they planted them together. I stood watching from the window, remembering how Michael and his father used to work in that same garden so many years ago. I hadn't forgiven him. Not yet. Maybe never completely. But I was learning to coexist with him again. To remember that before being the man who betrayed me, he had been my son, my baby. And maybe, with enough time, we could find something that looked like family love again. One warm spring afternoon, almost 7 months after the hearing, Leo and I were sitting on the porch. He was drawing in his notebook while I knitted a blanket. Mrs. Higgins was in her garden watering her plants. Everything was peaceful, normal, beautiful, in its simplicity. "Grandma," said Leo, without looking up from his drawing, "do you ever regret fighting for the house?" "Why do you ask that, my love?" "Because it was very hard. It made you suffer a lot. Sometimes I think maybe it would have been easier to just let them win." I looked at him. This boy who had carried so much weight on his small shoulders. "Do you regret showing the recordings?" He thought for a moment. "Sometimes. I miss my mom. Even though she was mean to you, she's still my mom. And I know she's in prison because of me. She is not there because of you, Leo. She is there because of her own decisions, because of the horrible things she chose to do." I leaned toward him. "And to answer your question, no, I don't regret fighting. This house isn't just wood and bricks. It is my story. It is where I loved your grandfather, where I raised your dad, where I took care of you when you were a baby. Losing it would have been like losing a piece of my soul." "I understand." He went back to his drawing. "I'm happy we won." "Me too, my love. Me too." That night, after putting Leo to bed, I stayed awake in my bed, looking at the ceiling. I thought about everything that had happened, about how I had been on the verge of losing it all, about how a 7-year-old boy had saved me when all the adults had failed. I thought about Jessica, sitting in a cell somewhere, paying for her greed. I thought about Dr. Claire, her career destroyed, her reputation in ruins. I thought about Michael, desperately trying to rebuild what he had broken. And I thought about me, about the woman I had been before this, naive, trusting, believing that family love was unbreakable. That woman had died. In her place had emerged someone stronger, wiser, marked by scars, but not broken. Someone who had looked betrayal directly in the eye and had chosen to keep fighting. I got up and walked through the silent house. I touched the walls my husband had painted. I looked at the photographs of our years together. I passed the room where Leo slept peacefully, his breathing soft and steady. This house, this life, everything had been about to be stolen, but it was still here. I was still here. I went out to the garden under the moonlight. The flowers Michael and Leo had planted were starting to bloom, new life growing in soil that had seen so much sadness. "We did it," I whispered to the night, as if my husband could hear me from wherever he was. "Our house is safe. Our grandson is safe. And I survived." A soft breeze moved the leaves of the trees. I liked to think it was him, telling me he was proud, that I had fought well, that I had protected what we built together. I went back inside and stopped at the door of Leo's room. I watched him sleep. This extraordinary boy, who had proven that true love sometimes comes from the most unexpected places. That family isn't always who is born with you, but who chooses to stay by your side when everything falls apart. "Thank you," I whispered. "Thank you for being so brave, for saving me when I needed it most, for reminding me that there is still goodness in this world." I went to sleep that night feeling at peace for the first time in almost a year. Not everything was fixed. Michael and I still had a long way to go. The scars of betrayal would never disappear completely. But I had won something more valuable than the victory in court. I had gained the certainty that I could survive anything, that my spirit, though beaten and bruised, could not be broken. And as the moonlight entered through my window, illuminating the room where I had slept for 40 years, I knew with absolute certainty that this house would remain mine until my last breath. Because I hadn't fought just for walls and a roof. I had fought for my dignity, for my right to decide my own destiny, to prove that a 72-year-old woman is not weak or disposable simply because of her age, and I had won. Not because I had money or power, but because I had something much stronger on my side. I had the truth. I had the unconditional love of a brave boy. And I had the iron will of a woman who had survived too much to give up now. This was my story, my victory, my life rebuilt from the ashes of betrayal. And no one, ever again, would take it from me.